right, welcome to the Latin Corner. Today we have a special guest, someone who has been following a lot. It's Wei Chung, right?
Yes, WeiChun.
You're a graduate from biology
Yes.
at SFU.
Yeah.
I know that you've been the SFSS science representative,
Yes, that's correct.
and I also know you from something that I saw in my first year of university. You were the one who led the SFU Orangutan Awareness Club, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I remember the funny poster on campus.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
My name is Wei Chung. My pronouns are he, his. I'm a recent graduate from SFU, actually graduating in April from
Nice,
biological
congratulations.
sciences. I was the previous science representative on the previous board. And I also started Orangutan Awareness Club. I'm currently still organizing SFU350. That's a bit about myself.
Yeah. What is your position as a Future 50?
I'm one of the lead organizer. So just doing organizing meetings, kind of mostly mentoring the newer members.
All right.
I've been involved for about 2 years, since 2019. So I'm just kind of sticking around, kind of making sure the group is transitioning, because we have a lot of new members that joined. And we're just sticking around, mentoring newer students.
All right. Before we get along with SFU 350, I would like to ask you, what is a tip that you would give to first years
First year, a tip on what?
of everything, school, mental health, whatever, something that you feel like every first year should hear before they start SFU?
I would say don't rush into things. I know it can seem like you want to finish the whole university experience in 4 years, or 3 years. That's kind of like the normal kind of schedule, or what people envision university is like. But honestly, I would say take your time, find your interest, find your passion, and just it takes time to like kind of find out what you're going to do, right, for university. So I would say that's the biggest advice, to just take your
Right.
time and don't rush into things.
Yeah, I could have learned that sooner too.
Yeah.
But well, let's jump right into it. So SFU 350, what could you tell me about the club?
So SFU350 is a climate justice club on campus that advocates for climate action, and we've been around for 8 years now. It started out with the divestment campaign, which we recently just have a big win with SFU committing to full divestment from fossil fuels. So that took 8 years. The club's been around for that long. And currently we're running our climate emergency declaration campaign. And we also do a bunch of actions on campus as well with TMX, with solidarity with land defenders like Wet'suwet'en.
Yeah.
That's mostly what we do on campus.
The TMX, you're referring to the pipeline, right?
Yes, the TMX Trans-Mountain Expansion Pipeline.
Yeah, so I think the most recent thing that I've heard from SFU 350 is your climate emergency declaration open letter, which Alas is a signer of.
Yes.
I'd like to touch a little bit on that. What can you tell me about that card, that letter?
So we wrote this letter to ask SFU to firstly declare a climate emergency, because we think it's important for institutions to really tell the community like how we're like in a crisis and that we need to act urgently. And this is something a lot of cities and a lot of universities has done, such as UBC, Burnaby City, even like cities like London has declared climate emergency. So it's a symbolic gesture, but it's also sending a signal to everyone that we need to act urgently to address this crisis before it's too late. Declare climate emergency, but also we have 7 demands that goes along with it. You can read our letter online as well. Like 7 declare climate emergency and declare, and to act on those 7 demands.
All right. What can you tell me about the status of this letter? Obviously, a lot of student action has been backed up.
Yeah.
This letter. What is the status of it? Like, have it already been recognized by SFU?
So we presented our letter. We did a presentation on September 28th at the Board of Governors meeting. The presentation went well. but the administration chose to counter our motion. So we had our motion that was put up by the undergrad rep, Serena Baines, and they, instead of kind of debating and discussing through our motion, our letter, and then voting on our motion, they chose to come up with their own motion to counter ours and delay. So what they're doing now is that they're trying to see what SFU is already doing, and then they're planning to decide what to do with our demand, the rest of the demands in January, the January Board of Governors meeting.
Yeah. So in this letter, you guys basically raised 7 demands.
Yes.
The current motion that SFU is proposing, do you feel like it addresses all those 7 demands, or did it take away some of the most important ones, or how do you feel?
I think it's taking away from it. I think they're trying not to commit to what we're asking for. And that's the problem with a lot of institutions. They're afraid to commit to these demands. And even like these demands that we came out with came in consultation with community members on campus, right? With groups like the SFSS, with SOCA, with DNA, all these groups that we talked to. So we came up with these demands as a community, and we presented that to the SFU, telling them this is just several actions that you can take to address the climate crisis as an institution with so much power and money behind it. And yeah, it's definitely taking away from it because they didn't commit to any of our 7 demands except for, the recent one with the divestment announcement. But it's after like 8 long years of kind of campaigning as well.
Yeah. So divest, for all the people who listen and might not necessarily know, divest is basically meaning to remove the funding for completely this petroleum or oil-based or fossil fuels, right?
Yes. So divestment is to kind of move money away from fossil fuel and start transitioning to cleaner energy and more local economies. And it's, even though SFU doesn't have a very big kind of money in fossil fuels, but still it's kind of revoking the social license of fossil fuel. And as like a society that we're saying that we're no longer going to invest in fossil fuels. And, as all the climate change report come out that says that we need to move away from fossil fuels. So us pushing institutions to kind of divest away from fossil fuels is sending that message that we need to start moving away from that.
All right. One thing that I wanted to touch about on the demands, that it's something that I found pretty insightful from your part, and I think you just mentioned, is that you worked as a community to come up with the 7 demands, and it shows in the letter. Because I don't think that a lot of people are aware between the link of colonization and climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty important that people realize that there is a very important link between the capitalist society that we have right now, in which colonization has affected the way we organize or basically just interact with our environment.
Yeah.
And the fact that you guys are bringing this up, from our part, from Alas, we want to say that we're very proud to be part of this movement, to support it in any way we can. Another demand that I was very keen about is demand number 4 about Climate Hub. It's basically to establish a student-led Climate Hub to guide sustainability policy. What can you tell me about this? A little bit more of insight. What's like the purpose of the Climate Hub on short and long term?
And first of all, thank you for Alas for supporting our letter and our campaign. The Climate Hub is it's something that's not new. UBC has their own Climate Hub. So the role of the Climate Hub is to kind of do research, to kind of engage students and have students the opportunity to volunteer on climate-related policies or courses. So, for example, UBC Climate Hub, they work with certain professors to come up with a program with like courses and stuff that is related to climate change and climate action. So that's kind of the role of the Climate Hub, to work with students, faculty, and kind of staff to work together, come up with courses or just recommendation on climate policy and such at SFU.
So a lot of these demands, I think that they tackle the point directly, and you guys, I think, make a really good job on emphasizing in your short version of the letter of what exactly you're arguing for, right? But I think that sometimes some people, members of the public, are not necessarily interested in these topics, what would you say to those people of why they should be interested in climate change or climate action?
Yeah, well, I think it's becoming very obvious that we really need to be diving deep into these issues. As you've seen recently with the floods, and even before that, the heat waves, forest fires, and these events are gonna keep coming and coming and becoming more frequent. And this has been predicted by scientists who wrote like the IPCC reports, that more severe weather is gonna come. Drier summer is gonna be worse, and there's gonna be more rainfall. So this kind of thing's gonna get worse, and it's gonna affect all of our lives, especially us living in like a coastal area as well. And we've seen like highways being washed away, and some of parts of Canada is cut off from some supplies as well. So yeah, I think we need to start caring because no matter where you are in the world, I think it's gonna start affecting you in ways that you might not even know. And that's the reason why we include our demands on the one you touch on education, right? I think that's really important because a lot of students that we talked to the past few months as well don't really have the knowledge on climate change, especially international students who are here. When we were talking to them, I remember a student was saying, oh, like, kind of like, what's the big deal with like a 30-something degree weather here during the summer? Because they don't know that it's not normal here, right? And like 700 something people died because of the heat wave.
Wow.
Right? So yeah, I think it's really important as an institution to be really educating your students on such a huge issue that affects your lives no matter what you do. So that's our demand to kind of like every course, every major faculty needs to kind of have their students be educated on climate change.
I completely agree. I honestly, my major is engineering, and my electives I chose history and geography, and it was so surprising to me, or kind of reminding, when I saw this letter, because it touched on everything that I've seen in courses, and especially when I saw that point of education, I felt like it's actually pretty truthful. Like people need to be aware of these things because it's gonna affect them in their lives, and they don't know it. Like they don't know. Or they're basically building on stuff that they don't understand necessarily, right? But yeah, so going a little bit more on that education part, like how would you think that the university should structure course load so every major or every discipline would touch on these important subjects?
We don't really have like an exact answer on how to like do those things, and that's why in one of our demands which is like the demand number 7 is to determine next steps, and which is to kind of like get faculty, staff, students, and community members together to kind of come up with an action plan on how to like execute these demands, right? And especially with courses and stuff, I think that's heavily involving faculty, and faculty needs to be involved in how we're gonna plan all these courses that students need to take, because we have some like the WQB requirements, right? So climate could be like a additional requirements, for example. So that's kind of one way SFU could go about it. But it needs to be with courses that educate students, like you said, about how colonization and how capitalism really created climate change. And because I think that's really important, especially living in Canada as uninvited guests here to host nations. Canada started out as I believe that Canada is a corporation that's just extracting resources and displacing Indigenous people, and continuing to this day to oppress Indigenous people for profits and extracting resources. So this kind of education is important as well. And even through things like how the fossil fuel industry has been historically spreading misinformation about climate change. They knew about the effects of climate change, like I think since the 60s or something, or some even way before that. But there's like a huge research you can read about as well, where I think it was Shell that did their own research on climate change, and they found that we are like affecting the climate globally, but they kind of hid that away and they put money into governments and lobby governments to give them more subsidies, give them more money in their oil exploration, right? So those kind of things are important as well to understand how we got to this point and what we need to do. And that's why, that ties again to divestment, while we're trying to move money away from fossil fuel corporations. So all these things are connected, and it's important to know the history and research on how we got here.
Right. Just to finish up, how can the student body involve themselves more with SFU350?
You can join us. We have weekly meetings, and we have a Slack as well that we kind of communicate. But just reach out to us through email. Our email is 350sfu@gmail.com. If you want to get involved, we have, no matter what your experiences, we have roles for you to kind of fill in. As long as you're passionate and you want to do something about climate action, that's all that matters. So.
Yeah, and talking about passion, you guys were in a little bit of heat recently because of the Mural. I've heard that they even wanted to put a disciplinary action on your records, and you guys got away with not having that. Massive respect from our side.
Yeah.
So can you tell me, just to finish up, a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. We painted a climate mural on Convocation Mall, and the point was to bring attention to, of course, our campaign, but also again, the urgency of the climate crisis and how SFU as an institution with so much power and money needs to do more. So they pursued student misconduct charges against student climate activists for painting a washable mural that was, you can just wash it with paint. And it's a form of peaceful protest, right? And they came after us and saying, oh, you should have asked for permission. But the thing is, you don't ask permission from an institution you're protesting against. That just doesn't make sense, right? And this is not a thing that only happens at SFU, as we see at McMaster with the McDivest students as well, who are organizing for divestment at McMaster. I think they were posting around as well, and then they got in trouble with the security as well. So it's not new. I think it's something that's very concerning that's coming up in different universities across Canada, that administrations are clamping down on students who are peacefully protesting. Because they just want to say, oh, this is university property and such, but who pays for that property? Who as students, right? We're allowed to peacefully protest and those kind of things. So
we should be allowed to have some sort of say on what the institution is using our funds for, right?
Yeah, and it's dangerous to kind of let the institution to kind of tell you what's an appropriate, because they told us, it's not an appropriate form of protest. We support peaceful protest, but not this kind of peaceful protest. So it's really dangerous for an institution to let them police you to say what's okay and what's not okay as peaceful protest. So. Yeah.
Well, folks, that was Wei Chung with SFU350. Thank you for coming to us and having this very insightful conversation. And hopefully, to all viewers, so our listeners, you guys get involved with their club and all their good work that they've been doing for SFU.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the interview.